Tucker, you don't hear much about him because he's in the top 10, but he's not number one. The only person who beats Bobby Tucker is Keith Vitali. And as a matter of fact, they have beaten each other 10 times each.
Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Keith Vitali. Welcome to Psychic Podcast. In this episode, I'm so excited to share with you a story about true friendship between myself and one of my rivalries back in my tournament karate days. His name is Bobby Tucker. Now, I just want to say that I'm very blessed to have ended my career as the number one fighter in the United States for 3 consecutive years. And that's in all weight classes. I was the number 5 rated fighter in full contact at one time. And then also, I was so honored by Black Belt Magazine when they named me one of the top 10 fighters of all time. Now, that's pretty impressive. And I know so because I fought in the era with some of the greatest fighters in the history of sport karate. Fighters like Bobby Tucker, Mike Jennings, Ray McCallum, Super Dan Anderson, John Longstreet, John Ork, Larry Kelly, Toki Hill, Jimmy Tabares, and so many others. We just had fantastic fighters. Every one of those fighters had stories written about him and magazine covers, and those covers created all these legends in martial arts. Now, I'm saying that because early in my career, based on that, no one would have guessed I would have ended my career the way I did. And why? Because I ran up against this guy named Bobby Tucker. Now, I was doing pretty good in martial arts tournaments, karate tournaments, and I was traveling around the southern region. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, and I was doing okay. But every time I ran up against this one guy, Bobby Tucker, I lost. And it just wasn't a fluke because get this, he defeated me 10 times in a row. Now, do you hear what I said? He beat me 10 times in a row. Now, how could somebody be considered one of the top 10 fighters of all time if you had somebody defeat you 10 times in a row? Well, that was early in my career. So I just wanted to tell you what happened. So I was doing both full contact karate, what they call kickboxing, also doing point karate. And I was doing pretty good. And I'll tell you about my first national tournament, the first time I ran into this Bobby Tucker, this character. So I go to my first national event. There's thousands of fighters there. I've never seen anything like it. Kind of overwhelmed, but I do pretty well. I win my first 7 fights. And along the way, I discovered later, somebody told me, Show Me a Magazine, I defeated 4 of the top 10 fighters in the country my very first time I fought. Now, there's no way I would have defeated those guys if I had known anything about who they were and their reputation. I would have been defensive and I would have got first. Fortunately for me, I didn't know who they were, and so I just went through them. But I ended up fighting Bobby in the grand championship match, and I lost to him. He's a much quicker fighter, lightning fast, and he beat me. And I just remember him being so cocky, and I'll never forget him being so cocky. And so I said, that's okay. So I was fighting full contact too. And as a matter of fact, I was doing pretty good because one of my wins was against Bobby Tucker. It was actually my first full contact match. So I defeated Bobby and I was going through a lot of my wins. And I had one notable win. I fought a 5 rounder against this guy named Paul Anselmo from Miami. Now, what made him so special is he was 9-0 at the time with 9 first round knockouts. So it was a pretty good feather in my cap when I defeated this guy. This was pretty good. It was after this fight that I thought I was doing so well that Bobby Tucker personally changed my life, my path in martial arts. And here's how he did it. I live in Columbia. Bobby Tucker lives a couple hours away in Greenville, South Carolina. And one day in my apartment complex, he shows up. There's a knock on my door, I open my door. I'm standing there with my roommate. My roommate is John Orr, who later on became one of the top 10 fighters and a tough heavyweight in the nation at the same time. So there's Bobby Tucker. I invite him in and we go sit down and I go, hey, Bobby, what are you doing here? He says, Keith, I just want to come and talk to you because I want to give you some advice. And he says, oh, you're never going to beat me if you don't allow me to start training you and for you to start utilizing your speed. And you got to give up full contact, your kickboxing career. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, listen, The reason you can't beat me is because every time we fight, you telegraph your moves. I see your moves coming from a mile away. He says you pull them back because why are you trying to hit me so hard, with full power round kicks and side kicks and punches? He says you're never going to beat me. So I said, well, let's say that you do start training me, and I take your advice. What happens when I beat you, Bobby? I said, how's that going to look? Are you going to be mad that I beat you after you train me? He goes, nah, and he's cocky as ever. He goes, nah. He says, I don't have any competition now. He said, I need some competition. That's why I'm going to work with you. So I said, well, when would you like to start? He goes, now. He says, stand up. So we stood up and he held his hand out like this. And he goes, I want you to hit my hand and get in your stance with the reverse punches and hit my hand. No big deal. I tried 5, 6, 7 times. Never came close. Every time I'd punch, he would just do this and smile. I didn't think anything about it. I thought no one could hit that hand. He says, now your turn. I held my hand out. He got his stance. And every time he moved, he fired his punch and hit it before I could just budge. And my first thought was, no wonder he's beating me all these times. As a matter of fact, he's so fast, he needs to be in a circus. All those traveling circuses under a campus tent. He needs to be doing this. I mean, I really thought he was that fast. So I couldn't believe it. So I went, oh my gosh, this guy is really fast. So we spent some time together. He trained me, and that was really nice that I started focusing on speed, and I did take his advice. I quit fighting full contact. I just went cold turkey. Said, nope, no more. I'm going to go this path. I'm going to stay on the path of full contact. I'm sorry, of point fighting. So here it is. Mike Geneva later makes a great observation. Now, Mike Geneva is one of my best friends from Colombia. We train and travel together and fight together, and he's a top 10 fighter. And he's like a historian about martial arts. He said, Keith, you know that if it wasn't for you defeating Bobby, Bobby would have been one of the best fighters of all time in tournament karate. He said, because think about this. Every time you fought Bobby, you would fight him in a semifinal match or grand champion match, and you would beat him. Guess what? I beat Bobby the next 10 times I fought him. So we had a record of 10-10. It just so happened that the second half of my career, when it counted the most in national tournaments, I was beating Bobby Tucker. So I always felt bad about that. But it's kind of an ironic irony that I was really focused and I really wanted to beat Bobby more than anybody because he had defeated me 10 times. So let me just share this one story with you. So here it is. I'm playing tennis. I was on a tennis team and I love tennis. To this day, I still compete. And I was at my apartment complex, and early on Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, I'm playing, and this Winnebago pulls up. And I know Winnebago, I noticed Bobby Tucker's driving. He owned it. And the door opens up, and Mike Geneva pops out of it, and he goes, hey, Vitali, quit playing tennis, jump in the van and the Winnebago. We're going to go to Alabama, compete in a tournament. No big deal. Let's do it. That's how it was back then. We just did it whenever we could. I jumped in it. I said, drop by my apartment. I'll get my gi, my safety pads, and off we went. So we get to the tournament, and as fate, of course, turns out, I fought Bobby in the semifinal match, and I defeated Bobby Tucker. And then I had to go into the grand championship match. Now, I was very fortunate to win that day, but watch this. Take a look at this photograph right here. I want you to pay note to who you see sitting here smiling, clapping for me. That's Bobby Tucker. We have remained friends until this day. We would go see each other and spend time together. And I just want to say it's been a wonderful journey to have him as a friend. And we're friends to this day. And there's so many times, and I'm not joking, he calls me up and says, we need to break that 10-10 tie. He said, I just caught a big fish and that should do it. He'll do anything. He's so competitive to beat me. But I hope you enjoyed this story of friendship and what the true martial arts is all about. And if you did, please, I want you to like it. I want you to share it if you can. Leave some comments. I'll be glad to reply to them if I can. And then, of course, on this red button right here, this block that says subscribe, do me a favor and subscribe on that as well. Until next time, ciao.